Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mediums in Action with me, Martin Litt-Wilson, and my good friend and expert medium, Ian Doherty.
Hello, everybody. Morning, Martin.
How you doing? How's things going in lockdown in your part of the country?
It's not too bad. You know, whenever I go to the shop, I wear one of those masks made by my dear sister, bless her. So I'm just sort of looking after myself more. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. Yeah, it's. Living in North Yorkshire is a bit strange in that I don't see many people as it is. So lockdown's not really been that strange in that respect. So, and also being a freelancer working from home, you know. So it's quite solitude as it is. You know?
Yeah, it hasn't been a great deal of change for me. You know, like I said, I have type 2 diabetic. So when I do go out, I just wear the mask, just a bit of comfort, I dare say. That's not a mask, a Halloween mask or anything, okay, ladies and gentlemen.
I think also as well, Ian, is, as you say, my mother-in-law is, again, type 2 diabetic, and my father-in-law had a heart attack recently, and both of those are classed as you know, that they're highly susceptible and it could be potentially very dangerous for them. So they're taking it very seriously. And no doubt as well that there's a little bit of, you know, kind of fear as well in this. You know, it could be a killer for them. And I should imagine, you know, so they're locking themselves away. They're a bit more suburban, like yourself. But you just have to be careful. And I think you have to be sensible. And that's the main thing you can do, isn't it, really?
Well, yes. Yeah, you have to. And you've got to think about other people as well. You know, I just give people a wide berth, you know, just stand out the way and let them walk past, whatever, and get on with things. You know, blokes doing shopping, we are generally, you know, in and out anyway. So it's nothing's changed there.
What are you saying about how women shop? No, we're not going down that route.
No, I know. We're getting out of water there, Martin.
Before we start digging a hole, let's stop that hole straight away. But interesting, we're talking about, obviously, serious global events. And one of our wonderful supporters and members of our study group, Cynthia Warren, asked, what is Spirit's perspective on the serious global events currently taking place? And obviously, I think we need to look at this not only from what's happening in regards to coronavirus, but also what's happening with Black Lives Matter, which is, you know, incredibly prevalent this week.
Yeah.
And also as well is all across the world, there is protests and uprisings. There's continual, you know, kind of people's anger about things. I mean, you must have talked to your guides about what's happening. What's your sort of perspective?
Yeah. Spirit give me the sort of sense, you know, when I was talking there is a fundamental shift where people do find their voice and they are speaking up very, very much about things. And I do feel the intolerance of things, the injustice of things, I do feel needs to be sort of looked at. You know, people generally comment on when you look at the overall picture, you know, with the Black Lives Matter, all the attention that is built up over a long period of time to where it is now. And I do feel it's going to come down to a situation where people start listening and, more importantly, start talking more, you know, whether it's over the multimedia platforms, you know, the social medias, when it comes over to opening dialogue and sitting down and talking, because I feel where it is of wanting to be, certainly Spirit side, when we had the sort of 60s and 50s, you know, it was all the latchkey children, you know, women are out there and men going out working, trying to keep things met during difficult times. And I do feel the family unit broke down a little bit. You know, there wasn't in the olden days, you know, so it wasn't as in the olden days, coming home, having mum, dad, children sat around the table, having a sing-song, you know, and that sort of thing. Obviously, before the advent of radio and TV and whatever. But I think now, I do feel because people are willing to talk, want to talk and need to, and want change and reform, then I do feel it's going to be better. And Spirit are wanting that sort of drive for people unity, you know, having that cohesiveness of that family unit again, bringing it where perhaps maybe the COVID-19, one of the positives, if we can talk about a positive. It's given people a lot of time to think, a lot of time to postulate over their errors of the ways, what they've done good, what they'd like, and what they want to change, what they want to make up for. So I do feel that is very much a sort of a start of it. When you think about it, something you just mentioned, these things are global. Obviously, the pandemic is global, and the sort of support, the outcry, the rage, if you wish, on the fact that yet another black person is being killed in police custody, So I think people are now starting to think, well, this needs to change. And again, it's having repercussions around the world, so it's on a global level. So therefore, it is able to get to all cultures and hopefully start a spark within that culture, not in riots or problems or whatever, but in talking. And I do feel that is what Spirit want. They want us talking again.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is about protest is, and it does start communication, and it does start people talking, and that's the important thing. Is any level of peace or progression has to come down to communication, and I think going back to Cynthia's question, what does Spirit think of all this? And I think originally 2 years ago, myself and you, we talked on the podcast saying that we knew that a big change was coming, that we knew that something would be happening in 2020, that there would be a big change. As I mentioned before, from an astrological perspective, I know a number of people who are astrologers, and I'm not talking about day-to-day astrologers, I'm talking about people who look at how things are running over a long run and what the influences are and what those. So I'm looking on a big global scale of what was happening. And without a doubt, 2020, I mean, it's almost like a cliche in that 2020 is one of those mystical numbers, almost like 2001, 2010, when there was apparently it was going to be the end of the world according to the Aztecs and that sort of stuff. But 2020 was going to be a crux point for humanity, that things would be changing. But interestingly, consistently, and it's something that we picked up as well, and we didn't know what would be these changes or what would be the catalyst to these changes, is that it would start the positive. It's the ending of one shift. It's the ending of a more materialistic life, and it's the beginning of a more spiritual life. And a spiritual doesn't just mean becoming religious or becoming spiritualist, but being more connected with each other and within yourself as well. Because if you can break down the barriers of self-hating, constantly judging yourself, once you remove those boundaries, you can then love other people as well. And I think this is what kind of coronavirus has done. It's put a 3-month pause on lots of people, and a lot of people not only saying, what have I done before, as you said, but they're also saying, what do I want out of life going forward?
Yeah, sorry, Martin. I do feel, what you're saying there, the, focus on the positivity out of a negative situation. My guides always have a saying, out of sadness comes their joy. I do feel that is the case here. Mindfulness is really to the fore with people. They're wanting to feel better about themselves, aren't they? And I do feel, as you were just saying, it does give that opportunity. All we need now is for the governments around the world to take heed and to listen and be willing to enter into a dialogue. Talk to the people of colour. What is the problem? How can we fix it? What is it from your point of view? Because I think we can get dragged in. We look at the situation, that is happening from a white person's point of view, not having a full understanding what it is from a person of colour's point of view. So I do feel we need to be listening. And that's what I mean. It's a talking and the dialogue.
The thing is, as well, is one of the biggest issues is education.
Yes.
And from school, that's also in the media and that sort of thing. And somebody posted yesterday a really good post. It was somebody on Twitter, and they said, if you're white and you want to get involved in Black Lives Matter, then just ask yourself these questions. And the questions were kind of, name the 3 black authors that you've just last read. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm lucky that I do listen to a lot of American podcasts. So I've listened to, I've kind of read Gary Young, who's a UK journalist and now a professor of Manchester, if I remember correctly. Maya Angelou I've read for years. So, I've read a lot of black literature. But what I would say is I think it's that greater understanding and the greater picture. It's the same with the Native Americans. It's same, and again, I have limited knowledge of all of this, but it's same with the caste system in India.
Yeah.
There is great divides there. It's historical, and it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be looked at. And that there's a whole system in India that to a Westerner looks unfair. If you look at the things like the Taliban that are still in existence, and the fact my son's learning about Malala at the moment, and she can't go back to her home country because she will get murdered, because she was trying to, and she's still doing it, is trying to get education for young girls, whether that's in Nigeria or whether that's in home country. And I think back to the question is, to pull this back again, is what does Spirit think to all this? Well, I think it's one of those things where Spirit has to let us learn this.
Yeah, to a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, yes, Spirit can give you guidance during this and say, look, stay strong, things will pass. There was warnings that something was going to be happening here and there. Obviously, none of us knew what extent it was. I don't think the astrological people knew. We knew that, myself and you, we talked a number of times about the changes that were happening in 2020. But nobody said, oh, there's going to be a big pandemic and then there's going to be, kind of uprisings here and there. But what I would say is there more of a guiding light and a lantern to what's happening, rather than saying, stock up on PPE in 2019 because in 2020, God, it goes, you'll need it. But I do feel that I think there is sadness in the spirit world about what's happening. But I think ultimately there are big changes, and we are at a time in humanity's life where things are going to change rapidly. And things are going to change. I mean, who knows where technology will be in 5 years, in 10 years?
Well, that's it.
Who knows?
Moves a frightening pace, doesn't he?
And who knows as well is one thing that I'm a big fan of is the universal base income for everybody, that everybody should be paid a universal income. It is consistently good for people, and it's also good for, kind of hospital, alcohol, mental health. People drink less when they're economically happy. They are injured less because economically happier, and it doesn't affect the employment. And the reason why we've never had UBS before is purely and simply because governments are afraid that everybody will say, right, that's it, I'm not working no more, which is actually not true. What they find is people still continue to work. It's like people who retired. They don't want to retire. They want to continue to feel useful, continue working. Yeah. The big change with everybody having a universal wage, the big change is start to see at least, if I remember correctly, 5 to 15% of the nation volunteering for good causes.
Yeah.
And imagine how much help that would be for people. I mean, what kind of a spirituality would we all have if we was actually helping fellow people?
Yeah, and that's what it's about. My guy's just been talking to me as I was listening to your eloquent words there, Martin, and it was sort of mentioned here, it's a little bit like Kardec, when he asked that question, what is God? And I do feel here there will be a lot of information being given to various mediums, various platforms. As you said, we're looking at people who you call it astrology and that sort of thing. But I do feel Spirit will now be, now that the sort of the worst of it is over, certainly for the COVID, and hopefully things get better. I do feel they are going to be planting information like they did previously, where a lot of people knew something was going to happen in March 2020, as we said, isn't it? So I do feel that there are messages going to be there, messages of hope, how we can carry it on and keep it going and spinning it over where people talk. I do feel it's communication. So it'll be interesting to see where Spirit want to, are seeing where it is, where Spirit are sort of seeing where this is going. We've often said from the Spirit side, that it there will be, and this is technological basis through science, that it will be possible to have a sort of device like a radio or telephone. You ring up and you speak to your lost loved one. Where do you leave that will? Or how do I make meringue again, please, mother? Very much that way, you know. So I do feel that is very happening. The two worlds are going to be coming a hell of a lot closer.
You're going to watch a BBC program called Days and Days. Oh, sorry, Years and Years, I think it is. And the final episode is very similar to what you're talking about. Yeah, just to finish this on a lighter note, I think also as well is what has been intriguing, and I've seen this story running across numerous news channels and also Facebook and things, is people reporting ghostly activity while they're in lockdown.
Yeah.
That suddenly spending hours in your house, you suddenly become aware of the knocks and the bangs and the activity that you weren't aware of before. And it's intriguing, really, because you can look at this from two angles. I mean, obviously, from a skeptical point of view, is certainly, I would say, people who live in cities often spend more time outside of where they live than where they do. So they might only spend sleeping time there. But now living there all the time, they're suddenly aware of these knocks and bangs that they've not heard before. And it's just that they've never been there before, so they've not heard them before. So they've not heard the creaking of the floorboards or the next door neighbour walking around. And so you could say, okay. But on the other perspective, I don't know how you feel about this, Ian, but I kind of feel that in this lockdown, I think more people will have spent more time, kind of just sitting there in quiet.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Being more relaxed. Well, not being more relaxed, but kind of just sat there and it's interesting. Social media has actually dropped in traffic during the lockdown. Less people were using social media. They were having more off time rather than actually having more on time, which you would imagine. So I think people have become heightened, that they've had actually an awareness switched on because they're sat in their rooms, sat quiet, might be reading. And that's when you sense things, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And when we're going through difficult times, we're worried, then our family, spirit side, want to draw close. So we feel that closeness as well. One of my good friends, sort of mentioned to me, she was in her London flat, just minding her own business. And then she walked into her bedroom and her, Alexa, started playing a particular prayer song. Now she's a Hindu, and it was playing a very sort of not well known unless you follow Hinduism and whatever. And it started playing this prayer song for her, and she was a little bit, what the hell, So I mean, it isn't what you ask Alexa on a regular basis, is it?
Well, maybe Alexa is going to be. We'll all have Alexas talking to our past relatives in the future.
Yeah,
maybe that's what it's going to be like. So.
Yeah.
But so I hope that answers your question, Cynthia. And what I would say is throughout any of these crises we go through, spirit is always there. They're always your companion, your spirit guides, your ancestors. They're walking with you and holding your hand through this time. Right. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. And thanks again, Ian. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.